It's always nice to have something fun to draw when you're learning a new piece of software. So I'm going to have us draw this temple of Delos. It's a Greek Doric temple, just to give us an excuse, and also to give us a challenge of interesting things such as drawing a colonnade and also drawing a complicated roof structure with some interesting profiles.
Well, now that we have our nice base colonnade, let's try to draw the entablature and the roof. Where we left off last time, we had this nice colonnade and a base. What we're going to do, we're going to draw a rectangle up on top of these columns. And again, this is a great way to learn that you can draw in all sorts of locations. So you see how I have kind of a roof right now, kind of an infinitely thin surface. Let's use our push-pull command, and I'm going to tap P for push-pull to activate that. And I'll push-pull up 2 feet. Type in 2 feet and enter. Now you might say, well, that doesn't look all that nice, does it? Because it's not very even. Well, one thing you can do in SketchUp is make reference to other objects. So I'm going to push-pull this surface, but I'm going to move my mouse down over the edge of this stair down here. Okay. You see how I can do that with every edge. I can make reference to the edge of the stair, and what that allows me to do is to push-pull so that the entablature lines up with the top stair. And this is a very simple way to take advantage of geometry that's already in the model. And I think what I'll do, I'm going to make that geometry into a group. Just right-click on it and choose Make Group. And then I'm going to copy this group up and start working on the roof. Okay, so I'll tap M for the move command and Alt on a Mac or Control on a PC to activate the copy command. And then I'm going to grab this entablature unit by its base point here, endpoint, and I'll drag it up to the endpoint in the top. You see how using these object snaps, just like in AutoCAD, is super handy for creating geometry that is kind of aligned with
each other. So let's take a look at the Doric order a little bit more, and basically you're going to be tested on this. There are many different pieces. They all have traditional names, and of course there are variations within the Doric style, but we're going to now create the entablature. And we're going to do that by editing that piece of the roof that we just
edit this group here, the bottom group, the entablature, just by double-clicking on it. When you're editing a group or a component, it's sometimes nice to not see the rest of the model. So if you go to the View pull-down menu, and under Component Edit, you can choose Hide Rest of Model. I use this tool an awful lot. So what I can do is go to the SketchUp Preferences. So under the SketchUp pull-down menu, there's an option for Preferences. I believe on the Windows version, it's under the Window pull-down menu. And under Shortcuts, I can try to find that Component Edit Hide Rest of Model. You can see I've actually already added a quick key for the shortcut key for the letter H. If you don't have one and you want one, you can just type in a letter that you want. I typed in H for hide, even though that already stood for another tool. But I also type with my right hand, draw with my left. So you may find that one of the left-handed keystrokes is easier for you. Anyway, when you type in some new letter, say J, and hit enter, it will change it. But I think I'm going to stick with H. So now if I just tap the letter H, I can toggle on and off the rest of the model, which is super handy for something like this where sometimes you just don't want to see the rest of that. What we're going to do here is let's draw kind of a pattern on the edge of the entablature, and I'm going to divide it up. I'm going to select the edge line, tap the Move Copy tool, tap Alt to make a copy, and I'm going to copy it over about 3 inches. And maybe I'll make a little profile here with some arcs on it, 2-point arc. And let's draw arc on this face. And I can even hit the space bar to select it, move M for Move Copy, and Alt to make a couple of copies times 3. Looks, I want to add in a little rectangle at the top and bottom. I think that'll look nice. There we go. Beautiful. What I can do, I'm going to erase these extra little lines. And again, to erase, you just click and drag over the line or click right on the line that you want to erase. So there we go. Lovely entablature, and I'm just kind of eyeing it. There is a whole bunch of tools which are available under the pull-down menus, but I'm going to call up a new toolbar that has a much wider range of... If you go to the View pull-down menu, under Tool Palettes, there should be an option for Large Tool Set. Now, those of you operating a PC, you're going to see a slightly different menu, quite a few more toolbars, but needless to say, the Large Tool Set is the same for both. Now, the large tool set, as you can see here, has a number of tools that duplicated up on the standard toolbar. The select tool, the paint bucket, the eraser. It also has a make component button, which is the same menu that we saw before. And a lot of the tools are just kind of expanded from before, push pull and all that. But the arc tools are visible. So some people don't like to have this up because it's not really necessary. But I like it for this special tool called Follow Me. And if you click on the Follow Me tool, it's kind of like the push-pull tool on steroids. What it will do is it can take this profile and it can follow along some edge. And you see how as I move my mouse along these edges, this profile is kind of marching along. If I get all the way to the edge here, it will create the profile around the entire perimeter of this shape. Now you'll see how there's this like weird little piece here. Sometimes when you go all the way around an object, it has a little trouble parsing the return. So I'll show you a little trick here. If you click on the Follow Me tool, click on the face that is the profile, move your mouse over the surface here and hold down the Alt tool. It's Alt on a PC, it's Command on a Mac. And when I move my mouse, you'll see a preview with this special operator. It will extrude all the way around the perimeter and kind of make the return a little neater here around the corner. And that is a way that you can get kind of a profiled perimeter. So that is our entablature. All you have to do to exit out of Component Edit is click outside of the component bounding box. So that's the lovely entablature. Roof forms are a little more tricky because they're sloped, right? They're roof forms. So let's double click on the roof element first of all. And I don't think it's quite as thick. So I'm gonna push pull this down 12 inches or 1 foot, whichever you prefer. I am going to draw the roof profile. Now, in this instance, the profile of the roof is going to come out from the roof, or at least that's how I want to draw it. So I need some surface to draw on out here, and I'm going to tap the right arrow. And you see how the right arrow forces the rectangle to be in the red plane. If I tapped the left arrow, it would be in the green plane, and the blue arrow would force it to draw in the horizontal plane. But let's draw on this vertical plane. What I'm going to do here, I'll just give myself a little rectangle, and we'll give ourselves a little bit of a profile. Maybe I'll give myself a couple of zigzags here. And here we'll even give ourselves a little bit of a lip. And again, this is not drawn to any particular scale, and probably I could do a much better job of finding a historically appropriate dimension for all these things. And let's see, I think I'm going to draw an OG in here somewhere. Just draw an OG. There we go. Erase these lines. This, of course, is pretty much entirely up to you. If you want to be more historically accurate, by all means. Okay. There we go, and I can erase these edges. And now there's the profile that I'm going to sweep along the edge of the roof. And if I want to modify it in any way, I can always come in and select just the lines and move just the lines down. Again, sometimes having a selection window can solve a lot of problems. Now I'll just use Follow Me, click on the surface, and like we learned before, hold down Command on a Mac or Alt on a PC. And it will go entirely around the perimeter of the surface and make for a very nice looking profile on my roof. Now, how do I make the roof sloped? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Actually, no, it's not really pretty straightforward. It's pretty hard, as a matter of fact. What we need to do, we need to find the midpoint of this roof. Because I'm in perspective, it can be a little distorted, but there's the midpoint. I think I'll draw a reference line straight down. Now you see how as I mouse around, move my mouse around, eventually it finds the blue axis. Now again, the perspective distortion make it look like it's not really I'm going in the right direction. I'm going to draw a rectangle that's going to bisect this roof. And let me just pan over here to the other side of the roof and hit escape. Pan is one of those commands that's, the zoom commands are pretty much all blind commands. They can work in the middle of some other tool that's in operation. Anyway, I'll draw a rectangle that completely bisects the roof. And now what I can do, if I double click on the rectangle, I can force it to split the roof in half. So now I can select the rectangle that I just drew, double click on it. In fact, I think I'll triple click on it and select everything on this roof. This will make my life a little easier. Now I can right click on the selection and choose intersect faces with selection. In order to draw the slope of the roof, I actually don't have to draw it. I just need to move the edges of the roof down some dimension. I'm just going to use a selection window to grab the edge of the roof, tap the move command or M, and I'll just move it down, and I think 10 feet should be plenty. I'm going to orbit the view a little bit so that it makes it easy to select just this edge, and I'll move that down 10 also. Remember, as you move these things down, you should be snapping to the blue axis, or else you're going to get some pretty wacky results. There we go. That's my lovely roof. And I can erase this rectangle to finish the surface. Now, the last piece is there is actually a profile of the entablature here that we need to draw. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle at the bottom of this. And what you'll see is it should fill in the entablature. That's looking pretty nice. There are some additional things that I could do. For example, I'm going to pull this back maybe 6 inches. I'll do that on both sides. Again, this is why it's so nice to be able to hide the rest of the model. The other thing that I can do, if I want, is to create a little bit of a recess here. Often in these ancient temples, there would be a lot of sculptures up there. So we could let's use offset. We'll give ourselves maybe about a 6-inch offset and push-pull the space in here back another 6 inches. Okay. And again, I'm sure that there is some historically appropriate and more precise measurement. I'm just kind of going with what it looks like. And again, you can go to town and you can create all sorts of different things. I'm just going to tap the H key to unhide the rest of the model. And now you can see we have a little bit of a problem here. The roof is obviously a little low. I'm going to exit out of the roof editing tool just by tapping the space bar to activate the modify command. Click outside of the tool. And now I'm going to use the move tool. And you see how I'm going in the blue direction. Whenever you have snapped to some direction that the cursor is inferring, if you hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to do that, I know you can't see it, you'll see that the inference becomes highlighted. It becomes darker. And then with that highlighted, you can move your mouse anywhere on the screen, and it doesn't matter. It will always only go in the direction that the cursor is inferring. So I can just use the very top endpoint at the top of my entablature, and there we go. We can get the roof placed very neatly. As I look at it, this base entablature, I guess, it looks a little too big to me. I'm going to use the scale tool. Whoops, this is the scale tool, to make it a little smaller. And this gives me a chance to talk a little bit about modifiers in SketchUp. Now, these are ways to change the operation of a tool to make it operate in some custom way. Now, in this case, I want to hold down the Option key to or Control on a PC to make it resize around the center point, but I also want to hold down Shift so that it forces the object to get smaller at an even percentage. You see how as I make it smaller, it's basically getting smaller around the center of this object. And if you look down at the value control box, what you'll see is that it's basically making it smaller around the center by a percentage. And then I'll just click anywhere, but type in 0.97. Let's see, that's about right, I think. There we go. That looks about right to me. We have our end result here, this lovely looking structure. What we're going to do is draw a little kind of glass box on the inside to allow us to have an interior space for our little cafe. And to do that, well, the problem we have is that everything's in the way. You know, the roof and the entablature and these columns. Well, when everything is in the way, there's a couple of ways that you can deal with this problem. You can put them on layers and turn off the layer, kind of AutoCAD style. SketchUp doesn't use quite so many layers, though, as AutoCAD. On the PC, you will see the layers menu available here. I'll go here on the Mac version and call up the layers menu. And you can make a new layer and call it, exterior building. To place these objects on that layer, I guess we should select them all. We can go and at the bottom of this menu, choose Put on Layer, Exterior Building. And then it's a matter of just turning off the layer. You'll see, of course, that anything that I had, which I guess I had all this junk in the background, I guess I put that on that layer too. Oh well. Now, I don't always like to do that because the layering gets a little complicated in SketchUp. The way that I do it is I select the objects that I want to go away, and I right-click on them and just choose Hide. And what this does is it only hides selected objects, and you can save this this state with these objects hidden, and you can bring them back. You can choose View, Hidden Geometry, and there they all are. And you can just right-click on some object and choose Unhide, and it will come back. I think I'm going to leave it hidden, View, and not show hidden geometry. And I'm going to try to draw a little room on the inside here of my project. And the reason is I need my base as a reference. What I'm going to do, I'm going to offset from this top a rectangle just so that I know where to draw the interior volume. And I'm going to offset it so it's just inside the columns, which should be 4'3". 4'3". Now I'll exit this group and I'll start a new group with my new interior volume. I'll draw the rectangle on top of the other one. Remember, we're getting that weird Z-fighting thing. So I'll just push-pull up 15 feet. And then I'll triple-click on this to select it and make it a group. I could definitely have a layer with existing conditions and new conditions, but in this case, I'm just going to go with painting it this way. Let me call back my hidden objects here, View, Hidden Geometry, and I'm going to select all here. Just do Command A or Control A to select all, and I'm going to unhide everything and then get rid of the hidden geometry. By the way, you may notice when you show the hidden geometry that each of these columns actually has lines in it. And this is because there really aren't true curves in SketchUp. They're basically all series of line segments. And in fact, when you draw a circle, you can control a circle or an arc. You can control how many sides there are. SketchUp by default is actually a fairly low number of polygons, which is to say it doesn't have a lot of geometry. If you want things to be a lot smoother, you can just type in some higher number, and it will give you a much smoother curve. For the most part, we don't notice it. The last thing I want to talk about here is paint behavior. So we have learned that there is a paint bucket, and we have also learned that there are a number of different paints. So let's go, and we'll go with glass. And what happens with paint, when you paint a group, if you paint kind of outside the group, I'm going to come in here with some glass, and I will paint right on the interior volume, and you can see it paints the entire thing. Now this is really handy if you want to paint the entire thing. However, if you don't want to paint the entire thing, the way that you paint is you double click on the group to paint inside it, and now you can paint, here we'll paint this gray, and you can paint other colors, different materials. Now, components operate the same way. If you wanted to paint the columns some kind of concrete texture, when you paint one, they'll all change. Now, for our project, you're going to want to come up with a paint scheme that is fairly consistent. I think for the roof, I do want to paint it, but I would like to have some highlight colors. One thing you can do is if you paint the entire roof, all materials will change, and then you can come in and modify individual ones by double-clicking on the group. And now if I were to come in and paint the back surface some different material, it will override the kind of global paint color. And components work the same way. The only trick is that with components, always be aware that when you're editing them all. So the last little finishing touch we need to do to our lovely pavilion here is to add some doors. To do that, we want to add them into this glass wall here. We'll need to edit that wall. Just select it and double click on it. And that will kind of enter that group. And as we learned before, we can tap the H key to hide the rest of the model. And if you haven't set a keyboard shortcut, remember that that's under View, Component Edit, Hide Rest of Model. Now we need to import a component that's going to be a nice door for our project. To do that, the Windows users will notice on the right of their screen that there's a components browser. For the Mac user, they'll have to go to the window pull-down menu and choose components. There is a whole world of components out there in what's called the 3D warehouse. And this is sort of SketchUp's vast online library. And you, the common user, can add your own custom objects to this 3D warehouse. What that means is that sometimes some of the models may be of questionable quality. So in the components browser, first of all, if you click the home button, that looks like a little house, it will just show all the components that are in your model. And obviously in this one, I only have two, the one that I created and the one that is the scale figure that came with the template. But what's nice about SketchUp is that there's this vast 3D warehouse. If you look here, it says 3D warehouse, and you can type in really anything you want. I'm going to type in glass doors and see what we come up with. And there are really, literally thousands of components on this 3D warehouse that we can use. So it's just a matter of finding one that you like. And so I'll just scroll through what my end result is here. And these look pretty nice here, these ones down here. So there's two things you can do. You can click on the blue link, and that will open up the 3D warehouse interface, and you can get a little more information about the doors. You can also, if you're feeling like, these are the ones, you can just click right on the image preview. I'm going to call up the 3D warehouse just so you can see what it looks like. These look like very tall doors to me. You know, I'm not sure I really like those. Some of these, interestingly enough, have a 3D model view. If you click on that, you'll see a special web interface here. This is just a SketchUp's online kind of version. Once you're in the 3D warehouse, first of all, you can do additional searches, but you can also just click the download button, and that will load it right into your model. Then once it's in your model, as long as you're editing a component, you should be able to place it right into your project. Now you'll notice this component, the base point is right here at the midpoint of the wall. So that's awfully handy when you're placing the doors. And I'll put another pair here of doors right in the middle of this side wall here. There we go. And that is how you can put together the base conditions of your model.